The reason your arms are not growing has nothing to do with how many curls you are doing, and everything to do with what is happening before you even pick up the weight. If this is your first time here and you want real research-backed fitness content that actually explains the why behind the results, hit subscribe. New scripts drop regularly, and every single one is built to give you something you can use immediately. Picture this. Someone has been training arms consistently for months. They are in the gym 2, sometimes 3 times a week, hitting biceps and triceps with everything they have. Curls, hammer curls, cable curls, skull crushers, pushdowns, the full menu. The effort is genuine. The consistency is real. And the arms look almost identical to how they looked 6 months ago. This is not a rare situation. It is one of the most common frustrations in resistance training. And the reason it happens is not lack of effort, not genetics, and not the specific exercises being selected. It is a fundamental error in how the training is being approached, one that begins before the first rep of the session and undermines every rep that follows. Understanding this error and correcting it does not require a new program, more volume, or a different split. It requires a shift in how the nervous system is being engaged with the movement, and that shift produces results that additional sets and exercises never could. The mind-muscle connection is not a myth. It is neuroscience. Here is something that gets dismissed far too often in evidence-based fitness circles because it sounds like bodybuilding folklore. The mind-muscle connection is a real, measurable neurological phenomenon with direct implications for hypertrophic outcomes. When a muscle contracts, the magnitude of that contraction, the percentage of available muscle fibers recruited during the movement, is governed by the motor signal sent from the central nervous system. The brain does not automatically recruit every available fiber in a muscle during a given exercise. It recruits what it calculates is necessary for the task, based on the load, the speed, and the intentional focus brought to the movement. Research examining muscle activation during bicep curls has shown that participants who were instructed to consciously focus on feeling the bicep contract and lengthen throughout the movement demonstrated measurably higher bicep activation than participants who simply moved the weight from point A to point B, even when the load and rep range were identical. Higher activation means more fibers stimulated. More fibers stimulated means a greater hypertrophic signal sent to those fibers during recovery. And a greater hypertrophic signal, repeated consistently across sessions, produces more growth than high-volume training performed without intentional muscular focus. The most common arm training mistake is treating bicep and tricep exercises as mechanical tasks, moving weight through a range of motion, rather than as neuromuscular practices designed to maximally stimulate specific tissue. The person performing 20 reps of mindless curls with a weight that allows momentum and body English to assist is doing significantly less muscular work than the person performing 12 controlled reps with genuine attention on the bicep through every degree of the movement. More reps, heavier weight, additional exercises. None of these compensate for the fundamental deficit of insufficient motor unit recruitment caused by inattentive execution. The elbow position error that kills bicep development. There is a second error embedded in most people's arm training that operates below the level of conscious awareness. A mechanical mistake so common, it has become the standard execution rather than the exception. During a standing or seated bicep curl, the position of the elbow relative to the torso determines which portion of the bicep is most heavily recruited and how effectively the muscle can express force through the full range of motion. When the elbows drift forward during the lifting phase, rising toward the front of the body rather than remaining fixed at the sides, the anterior deltoid takes over a portion of the work. The shoulder begins assisting the movement. The load on the bicep is partially transferred to a muscle group that is not the target, and the peak contraction at the top of the curl becomes mechanically impaired because the bicep is now working from a shortened and partially deactivated position. Most people do not know their elbows are drifting. It happens because the weight is slightly too heavy for the bicep to complete the movement cleanly, and the body solves the problem the way it always does, by recruiting whatever additional muscle is available to complete the task, regardless of whether that muscle is the one being trained. The fix is not dropping the weight dramatically. It is fixing the elbow anchor, keeping the upper arm stationary throughout the entire movement, both on the way up and on the way down. The lowering phase matters as much as the lifting phase because the eccentric portion of a curl, the controlled lengthening of the bicep under load, is one of the primary drivers of muscle damage and subsequent hypertrophy. A slow, controlled, elbow-anchored curl with a weight that challenges the bicep specifically, rather than a heavier curl assisted by the shoulder and momentum, will produce more bicep development in 12 weeks than most people achieve in a year of ego-loaded training with drifting mechanics. Why triceps training is where most arm goals actually live. Here is the insight that changes arm training for most people who receive it, and it contradicts the intuition that drives the majority of arm-focused gym sessions. The tricep accounts for approximately 2/3 of the upper arm's total mass. The bicep, despite being the muscle most associated with arm size and the one most people spend the most time training, accounts for the remaining third. This means that if the goal is visibly larger, fuller, more impressive arms, the primary training emphasis should be on the tricep, not the bicep. Yet, the inverse is true for the vast majority of people training arms. They curl. They curl more. They add cable curls to their barbell curls and their dumbbell curls and wonder why the arm is not growing. The tricep training that actually produces the mass increase visible from every angle, particularly the lateral and long head development that creates the horseshoe shape seen on well-developed arms, requires overhead extension movements in which the long head of the tricep is taken into a fully stretched position under load. This is the most growth-sensitive portion of the muscle, the largest of the three heads, and the one most consistently undertrained in programs dominated by pushdowns and close-grip press variations. Overhead tricep extensions, performed with a dumbbell, cable, or EZ bar, place the long head in a stretched position that pushdowns never achieve. The stretch under load is a potent hypertrophic stimulus, and including overhead extension as the primary tricep movement, rather than an accessory, dramatically changes the growth stimulus the muscle receives across a training block. Most people's arms are not underdeveloped because they lack bicep volume. They are underdeveloped because their tricep training is mechanically insufficient to stimulate the muscle that comprises the majority of the arm's mass. The frequency and recovery problem. The final piece of the puzzle is one that operates against an assumption embedded in how most people organize their training week. Arms, particularly biceps and triceps, are relatively small muscle groups with limited recovery demands compared to the larger compound movement muscle groups. This leads many people to train them with high frequency and high volume, believing that more stimulus will produce more growth. The problem is not frequency. The problem is quality of recovery between sessions. When arms are trained as an isolated session after compound upper body work, pushed to the end of a chest and back day, or trained in a fatigued state following heavy pressing and pulling, the quality of the training stimulus is significantly reduced from what it would be if those muscles were addressed when they were fresh and neurologically ready to produce maximal effort. Biceps are heavily involved in all pulling movements. Triceps are heavily involved in all pressing movements. A person who has trained heavy rows and pull-ups before their arm session has already subjected the bicep to significant mechanical demand before the first curl begins. The session that follows is not a fresh stimulus. It is an additional load on a muscle that has already been substantially worked. Restructuring arm training to occur when the muscles are genuinely fresh, either at the beginning of a session or on a day where pressing and pulling volume is lower, produces a measurably higher quality training stimulus that the previous placement, however well-intentioned, could not generate. Conclusion: bigger arms are not built by adding more curls to a routine that is already not working. They are built by fixing the neurological engagement that determines how many fibers are being recruited, the mechanical precision that ensures the right muscles are doing the work, the exercise selection that addresses the muscle comprising the majority of the arm's mass, and the session structure that provides the freshness required for genuine quality effort. These are not complicated adjustments. They do not require a new program, additional gym time, or heavier weights. They require the application of precision to the training that is already happening, and precision, in arm training as in most physical development, is what separates consistent progress from persistent stagnation. Fix the mistakes. Keep the effort. And watch what the arms do when the right muscles are finally receiving the right signal. If this gave you something genuinely useful, something you can take into your next session and feel the difference immediately, subscribe. Every video on this channel is built the same way. Real information, no fluff, no recycled advice. Just the stuff that actually moves the needle. Most people chasing bigger arms are working harder than they need to on the wrong muscle and ignoring the one that would change the shape of their arm faster than anything else in their program. The math on this has never been explained to them. Until now.